Sebastian. I'm a co-founder here at Glide, and today we're going to walk through the experience that one of your clients will have when they complete a disclosure form using Glide. So they're going to start this process when they receive the invitation via email that you sent them when you're sending out forms from Glide, and they're going to have a big button here that says Get Started. And once they click on that button, after they create an account, they're going to be taken to the overview screen of the form packet that you sent them. So there's a few components of this screen. The first thing we can see here is that there's this hero image, which is going to tell your client exactly what the state is and what their next step is. So they just have one simple button here that's labeled Begin. That's by design to make sure this is super simple for them. They're also going to have a list of forms that they need to complete, and they can see the history of this form packet. So I'm going to go ahead and click Begin. And once I do that, I'm taken to the introduction screen for the first form that I'm completing. So today we're going to do the real estate transfer disclosure statement. And here I just have the option to get started, and I can also see a preview of the original form. So agents in California are super familiar with this form. This is obviously a really dense and difficult form to fill out, and there's some major issues with filling it out by hand. So an obvious example is, a question like this that is kind of sandwiched between two lines of text is really easy to miss. Secondly, your client might check one of these boxes and then forget to provide a required explanation, or they might provide contradictory answers on some of the questions on the second page here. So even experienced agents and brokers miss things when filling out a form that's this dense. And if this form is not filled out in its entirety, there can be contractual implications. So this is one of the most critical documents in a real estate transaction, and we want to make sure that it's filled out correctly. And the benefit of using Glide is that we'll be sure that every required question is answered, every required explanation is provided, and your client is encouraged to disclose fully on every question, which is hopefully going to help you reduce the likelihood of costly disputes or mistakes later. All right, so let's go ahead and begin. Once I hit Get Started, I'm taken into the first section of the transfer disclosure statement. And when answering questions in Glide, I'm going to be taken through this form one question at a time. So I can skip a question if I want and come back to it later by hitting Continue. But I'm going to have to provide an answer for every required question before I submit the forms for review. Here I'm given access to simple multiple choice interface where I can just click and proceed naturally, selecting all the items that exist at my property. And this is an example of a branching question. So because I said there was a garage, I'm going to be asked if the garage is attached to the property. If I didn't say I had a garage, then this question wouldn't be asked. And so the benefit here is that we're only going to ask your clients questions that are relevant based on their previous responses. And the TDS doesn't include that much branching logic, but many other real estate forms do. And it's a common problem that clients get confused and end up answering questions about, for example, a multifamily property when they live in a single family home. So these are all additional examples of branching questions based on what I selected. And this is an example of a question that requires a written explanation. So written explanations are a great feature in Glide because they allow your client to simply naturally type their responses to a given question. So one of the issues on the paper form is that when I'm handwriting these written explanations, a lot of times people can't read what I'm writing. And that can also be a source of disputes later. And it's just difficult to update that information after that form has been finalized because it's actually handwritten directly onto the form. So in the case of Glide, all of these written explanations are going to be neatly typed. On this question, we can also see another great feature of Glide, contextual help. So here there's a Learn More link that relates to this question about 220 volt wiring. If I click on this, I'm going to get an explanation that defines what 220 volt wiring is, which is going to help me determine whether I have it at my property. All right, so I'm just going to continue here. And let's say that I have a significant defect in my sidewalk. I might want to say something like there are significant cracks in the sidewalk outside. And then I could also use the attach feature to attach an image of the sidewalk, or I could attach a receipt or an inspection report directly to my form. And that attachment is going to show up as an addendum to the form, and it's going to be bound into that same PDF. And then also I'm going to have a separate PDF doc that includes all of the attachments for my form. And I can even bring in files from cloud storage services like Google Drive or Dropbox directly through Glide. All right, so on this second section, I'm just asked 16 yes or no questions. So I'm going to skip the first one here so you can see what happens when I do that. And on this one, this might be a question that I'm struggling with. So I can use the flag for review feature in order to make a note that I'm not sure about this question. So not sure about the fence in back, need to investigate. So when I flag a question for review, that's going to be noted for me on the final review screen. And also when I submit my answers to my agent, they're going to see all of the questions that I flagged. So this is a great way to focus the conversation around these forms on questions that were difficult for your client to understand or that they might be confused about. Knowing that ultimately it's your client's responsibility to answer these questions as best they can, it's a helpful feature for ensuring that nothing gets missed and that disclosure is done fully. All right, so I'm just going to breeze through the other 16 questions on this form on page 2. And at the end of every form, we also include a free form question that clients can use to provide any other additional information that's not included on the form. And this is another benefit, again, of using Glide, where anything else that occurs to your client, they can easily attach documents and they can easily type as long as an explanation as they want. And that's actually going to wrap to the second page of the form. And so we'll automatically generate a text overflow addendum for any textual responses that don't fit on the space provided on the form. And so again, this is another way to just encourage your clients to share anything and everything that's relevant to the sale of the property. So on this last screen here, we call this our review screen. This is telling me that there's a couple issues that I need to fix. And so I can use this screen to see all of my responses so far, and I can see that I've left one of these questions that's required blank. So I'm going to say that all of those items are in operating condition, and I can also use the Fix Issues button to walk through any issues that still exist one by one, and I can see a summary of any questions that I've flagged for review. All right, so at this stage, I've answered all of the required questions. Both of these sections of the TDS are marked as complete. I can hit save and continue. And I want to note also that your client's responses are saved as they go, right from the beginning. So there's no chance that they're going to lose any of the data that they've entered in this experience. And similarly, if you invite 2 clients and they both log in at the same time, we're going to warn them if they start editing the form at the same time, but they'll both be able to share the same set of answers. And so this makes it really easy for your clients to fill out these forms. They can take breaks and come back, and they're not going to lose anything. So in this final step, I'm just asked to submit my forms for review. And here I have the option to either do this later if I want to go back and change my responses, or just go ahead and submit the forms. So I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. And at that point, I get feedback that I'm done. And from here, I'll know that my responses have been sent to my agent for review, and then my agent's going to be in touch with next steps.